In 1876, the vast plains had not yet seen the first snowflakes of the season, but the cold had already crept in deep enough to make anyone feel as if the sky was holding its breath, quietly watching every breath of the people below. Hidden among the dark green cedar forests and the rusty red iron-stained canyons near Echo Valley was a small settlement called Hollow Creek, a place where people came to forget their past, disappear from the world, or hope to be reborn under a new name. Among the few residents there was Evelyn Hart, a young woman who was the daughter of a military nurse who had served in the Union Army during the Civil War. Evelyn worked at the only clinic in the area, just a simple wooden room added onto the side of the church building. It was very short of proper medical tools, but it was full of quiet prayers and fragile hope. Her hands were used to stopping heavy bleeding, setting broken bones, and holding dying men as they whispered the names of their wives, children, and hometowns. Names she never knew, but still remembered as if they were part of her own life. Evelyn carried secrets she could never speak aloud. In truth, almost everyone in Hollow Creek kept part of their life hidden, but her secret lay deep behind her pale eyes, in her quiet movements, and in the way she moved through daily life as if she was always waiting for a certain moment, a moment when someone would see through her and recognize the real person hiding beneath that calm surface. Even though she lived among people who had survived harsh droughts, violent robberies, and fierce blizzards, Evelyn still kept an invisible distance. She was both part of Hollow Creek and forever a stranger in the very place she had chosen to stay. One early morning, when the sky was just turning pink with dawn, the son of Pastor Silas rode his horse at full gallop into Hollow Creek. The horse was panting hard, white foam around its mouth, and the young man looked panicked, his voice breaking with fear. "There's a fever outbreak in Red Hollow. It's already killed 3 hunters, a kind of fever that makes people's skin boil and peel off in patches." The people of Hollow Creek were used to many hardships, long droughts, highway robbers, sudden blizzards, so they did not panic right away. They just looked at each other, quietly thinking it over. But Evelyn Hart's heart tightened. She knew fevers well. She understood that they spread not only through blood and flesh, but also through fear, through whispers in the dark, through suspicion and isolation. That afternoon, Evelyn quietly got ready. She filled her leather bag with the things she needed: quinine bark, willow branch tea, clean cloth, needles and thread for stitching wounds, and a few bottles of pain medicine she had made herself. She saddled her loyal mare, Clover, the horse that had followed her on many long journeys. When she stepped out of the clinic, she saw Pastor Silas standing on the church steps, his face full of worry. "You shouldn't go alone," he said, his voice low but firm. Evelyn did not look up at her father. She only answered briefly, "I won't go alone." She knew that for sure, because on the other side of the mountain, but someone was already waiting for her, a man whom all of Hollow Creek both respected and feared, and she trusted him more than anyone wearing a sheriff's badge or standing behind a pulpit. Evelyn knew she wouldn't be going alone, even though no one in Hollow Creek realized it. On the other side of the mountain, under the old cedar trees where the river curved gently, someone had been quietly waiting for her since morning. His name was Kai Toma, a hunter and guide who was half Navajo, half Cheyenne. Many years ago, during the chaotic days of the war that both of them tried to bury, Kai had saved the life of her father, a Union Army military nurse. From that moment, an unspoken bond formed between them, deep and unbreakable. Kai was the kind of man who made all of Hollow Creek both respect and fear him. Tall and broad, quiet, but with skin the color of river stone and eyes as deep as a frozen lake, He moved lightly, almost without sound, always carrying a bow, arrows, and a dagger at his side, but he had never used them to threaten the innocent. To Evelyn, Kai was the most trustworthy person, more than any lawman with a badge, more than any long sermon from the church pulpit. They met under the cedar canopy, where the early sunlight slipped through the leaves in thin golden streaks. A light breeze carried the dry scent of sage and a faint, vague warning. As soon as Evelyn finished tying her reins, Kai stepped out from the shadow of the trees, silent as part of the forest itself. Before she could speak, he said in a low, steady voice, "This isn't just an ordinary fever." Evelyn paused and looked straight into his eyes. "Gee, then what do you think it is?" Kai turned his gaze toward the distant mountains, where Red Hollow was hidden. "The people up there call it ash smoke. They believe it's punishment from the spirits because someone disturbed the resting place of their ancestors and dug up sacred ground." Evelyn clenched her jaw. "And you? What do you believe?" Kai looked back at her, his eyes steady. "I believe we've already buried too many good people to let superstition kill any more." Without another word, they mounted their horses. Two silent figures rode deeper into the high country, where the trees leaned crookedly and the shadows felt older than time itself. They arrived at Red Hollow just before sunset faded completely. The small village was scattered with rotten wooden cabins, most of them abandoned. Only one chimney still released a weak stream of smoke, like the last breath of the place. Evelyn and Kai moved closer in silence, their eyes carefully watching every movement in the fading light. Inside the last cabin, with someone still alive, a woman lay on the bed, her skin covered in red patches as if burned by fire, her breathing broken and uneven. Beside her, a small boy sat with wide, terrified eyes, clutching the edge of a torn blanket. Evelyn's heart broke. The fever was real, cruel, and unforgiving. She knelt down, checked the pulse, wiped the sweat, and took medicine from her leather bag to reduce the fever and ease the pain. Kai stood at the door, scanning the forest with the calm of someone who had survived many ambushes. After a few minutes, he spoke softly. "There's someone watching." Evelyn didn't look up. "Oh, I know." The next morning, while the fog was still thick, 3 riders appeared at the edge of the village. The leader wore a dusty long coat with a gun belt stained with dried blood. It was Malcolm Bain, a former cavalry officer turned bounty hunter. He wasn't there to save the sick, he came for Kai Toma. Bain got off his horse slowly, walking with the confidence of someone used to controlling fear. He touched the brim of his hat, revealing cold eyes. "Kai Toma," he said slowly, "I thought you died at Snake River 3 years ago." Kai stood still, his hand near his dagger. "I'm not dead," Bain sneered and spat on the ground. "That's a shame. There's a bounty on your head, dead or alive. It's all the same to me." Evelyn stood up, blocking the bed and the door. "There's a disease here." You should keep your distance." Bain glanced at her like a snake ready to strike and gave a cold smile. "I don't care about disease. I only care about money and the message." The air tightened like a string about to snap. The first gunshot rang out right after, tearing through the quiet morning. Bain let out a mocking laugh, his hand already resting on his gun. The air inside the cabin felt thick, like before a storm. Kai didn't wait. The moment Bain drew his weapon, Kai lunged forward, pushing Evelyn to the ground, just as the first bullet tore through the wooden wall. Splinters flew everywhere, the sick woman cried out weakly, and the boy began to scream. Kai rolled, pulling Evelyn behind the old wooden bed, drawing his dagger in a split second. Another bullet shot through the window, grazing his shoulder, but not stopping him. He whispered urgently, Take the boy and go out the back now. I'll hold them off." Evelyn shook her head, her eyes red. "I won't leave you." But Kai's voice was firm as steel. "Evelyn, go!" She clenched her teeth, nodded once, then held the boy tightly and ran low toward the back of the cabin. A tilted bookshelf blocked the rotting back door. She shoved it aside and rushed out. Snow had begun to fall lightly, white flakes landing silently like a quiet warning. Evelyn ran straight into the forest, her heart pounding, holding the boy close against her chest, his face buried in her coat. Gunshots still echoed behind her. 2, 3, then suddenly silence. Evelyn didn't dare look back. She ran to a rocky hollow beneath the cedar trees, a place where she had once hidden medical supplies. She set the boy down, wrapped him tightly in a blanket, and whispered calming words even as she trembled. She waited, praying in silence, her eyes fixed on the darkness. An hour later, Kai emerged from the forest, blood on his sleeve, his face smeared with dirt. Evelyn almost burst into tears when she saw he was alive. "You're hurt," she said, her hands shaking as she reached out. Kai shook his head. "Not my blood. One of Bane's men won't be riding again. The other 2 ran." "And Bane?" Kai didn't answer. He only looked toward the cabin, still smouldering quietly in the night. Evelyn held the boy tightly and ran through the forest as light snow fell, covering their tracks. Her heart pounded, and gunshots still echoed behind her like a warning of death. She reached a rocky hollow beneath the cedar trees, a place where she had once hidden medical supplies, wrapped the boy in a warm blanket, and whispered comforting words, even as she trembled from fear and cold. An hour later, Kai stepped out of the darkness, blood on his sleeve, his face smeared with dirt and ash. Evelyn almost burst into tears when she saw he was alive. "You're hurt," she said, her hand shaking as she reached out. Kai shook his head. "Not my blood. One of Bane's men won't be riding again. The other 2 ran." "And Bane?" Kai didn't answer. He only looked toward the cabin, still quietly burning in the night. They didn't stay long. The 3 of them moved to an abandoned station near Black Elk Ridge, a collapsed roof, walls covered in vines, but still with a fireplace and 4 walls for shelter. Kai lit a fire while Evelyn took care of the boy. The warmth slowly brought color back to the child's cheeks, but Evelyn could still feel death lingering in the corner of the room like smoke that wouldn't fade. She looked at Kai. "This isn't just a normal disease, is it?" Kai nodded, his eyes fixed on the darkness outside. "No, something ancient has been awakened." That night, they didn't sleep. The wind howled through the cracks like whispers from the dead. Evelyn held the boy closer, praying in silence, knowing their journey had only just begun. If this story of courage and sacrifice touched you, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell it to your loved ones. Don't forget to follow for more emotional Wild West stories. Thank you for being here. The night at the abandoned station passed in anxiety. The wind howled through the cracks like whispers from the dead. The next morning, Kai found something strange. On the frost covering the window were swirling patterns and deep claw marks not made by humans or animals. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. "These weren't here last night," she whispered. Kai nodded, his eyes fixed on the deep forest. "The land is waking up. It knows we're trying to save the boy." The boy was a little better, his fever reduced, but still weak. They couldn't stay. Kai spread a thin hide from his bag onto the floor, a map with no village names, no modern roads, only curved rivers, animal trails, and symbols drawn with charcoal and red earth. He pointed to a black crescent shape in the corner. "The hollow tree. My grandmother said it drinks sickness, a place where old stories go to sleep, where the land listens. Evelyn didn't laugh. After what they had heard the night before, and she no longer dared to doubt. How far? 2, maybe 3 days, if we avoid Bain's hunting routes. She looked at the boy sleeping on her lap, his breathing steadier but still fragile. Can he make it? Kai didn't answer right away. He placed his hand on the boy's chest, feeling the weak heartbeat like a distant echo of the earth. It's not about whether he can survive the journey, but whether he can survive what's waiting ahead. They left the station before noon. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No birds singing, no foxes or wolves howling. Only the crunch of snow under hooves and footsteps. Evelyn held the boy close, wrapping him tightly in a wool blanket. Kai walked ahead, eyes scanning every shadow, bow always ready. They knew they were not alone. Something was watching them, not human but older, deeper, and it was waiting for them at the hollow tree. They arrived in the late afternoon, when weak light filtered through the ancient trees. In front of them stood 3 large rocks like broken teeth, and at the center of a shallow hollow was the hollow tree, its trunk as wide as a cabin, its roots twisting like hands gripping the heart of the earth. The bark shimmered faintly, and mist curled around its base like a living breath. Kai stopped before the circle of stones, knelt down, and placed a bundle of sage, a carved bone, and a strip of red cloth. He whispered a prayer in Cheyenne, steady like a drumbeat under the skin. The air went completely still. Then the wind shifted, the mist slowly cleared, and an opening appeared at the base of the tree. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She carried the boy inside. It was strangely warm within, the air filled with the scent of juniper, damp earth, and a faint hint of metal. The roots above glowed with a soft golden light, pulsing slowly. She laid the boy on a bed of soft moss in the center and knelt beside him. Kai stood at the entrance. Wait, if the tree accepts him, it will take the sickness. If not, Evelyn didn't let him finish. She placed her hand on the boy's chest. His breathing was too weak. She leaned close, forehead touching his, and closed her eyes. Not praying to God this time. She spoke to the tree, to the earth, to something older than crosses and guns, no words, only her heart speaking. Then the roots shone brighter. The ground trembled gently, like a waking heartbeat. A low hum filled the space. The boy jerked once, his back arching, then went still, too still. Evelyn panicked. No! But his eyes opened, clear.
He's aware. The fever was gone. I heard singing, the boy whispered softly. From the stars. Kai knelt beside them, his face filled with both awe and sorrow. The tree has taken his sickness. Evelyn turned to him, her voice trembling. Will it come back? Kai looked at the bark, now dim again. No, but there is always a price. The moment the boy opened his eyes and whispered about the singing from the stars, the wind suddenly rose violently in the clearing. Gunshots exploded like thunder, tearing apart the sacred silence. Malcolm Bain, or rather Redfield, as Kai once called him, had found them, along with the rest of his men. They didn't come to talk. They came to finish it. Kai stood up immediately, his bow already drawn. Take the boy and go, I'll hold them off. Evelyn shook her head. You can't do this alone. Kai looked at her.
Did his eyes steady. I'm not alone. This is sacred land. The forest will remember. There was no time to argue. She held the boy tightly and ran out of the tree. Strangely, the branches moved aside on their own, roots lifting to clear a path like living hands. The forest was protecting them. Behind her there were shouts, rapid gunfire, then screams of pain. Evelyn didn't look back. She kept running until she reached the edge of the forest, where black smoke rose from the direction of the hollow tree. She waited, her heart pounding, holding the boy close. Minutes felt like hours. Then from the darkness Kai appeared, limping, his clothes soaked with blood, but alive. Evelyn rushed to him, letting him lean on her. Kai breathed heavily. It's over. Redfield won't hurt anyone again. They said nothing more. In the distance, one the hollow tree stood quietly, ancient and full of memory. The smoke slowly faded into the cold wind. Evelyn knew something had changed forever, not only in her, not only in the boy, but in the land itself. The land had taken back its balance, through blood, and through the loyalty of those who chose to stand with it. After Redfield was defeated, light snow fell, covering all traces of blood and smoke. Evelyn stood at the edge of the village, watching Awan, the boy who had once been close to death, running and playing with other children by the river. Their laughter echoed like sunlight through the mist. His cheeks were rosy again, but Evelyn still carried a quiet pain. Too many had died, 6 elders, 3 mothers, and children she could not save. Inside the council house, Kai sat with Walking Bear, an old elder, sipping black tea from a clay cup. He said to Evelyn, "You brought back sacred water, but more importantly, you brought back memory. Memory has power." They called a council. Settlers and Cheyenne gathered by the river under the cedar trees. Evelyn stepped forward. "My name is Evelyn Hart. I was taught to heal not only the body, but also misunderstanding, fear, and lies in people's hearts." She told the story of Awan, the boy who survived not only because of medicine, but because of the courage of someone many had called an enemy. Kai stepped forward, his voice low and heavy. He spoke about Redfield's greed, the false trails, the stolen medicine, and the bodies left in the forest. A heavy silence fell. Then Evelyn's father, Pastor Thomas, stepped into the circle. "My daughter betrayed me, lied to me, and left me.
But she did it for what is right. I once thought loyalty to God meant obedience. Now I see it means compassion, truth, and courage." He looked at Kai and bowed his head. "I see God in you too." An old settler woman with silver hair stepped forward. "My grandson died from winter fever last year. If someone like her had been there, maybe he would still be alive." That night, they lit no torches and kept no armed watch. They sat around the fire, listening to each other, to the wind, and to the stories that once divided them. Evelyn and Kai stood by the river under the thin moonlight. "Will it last?" she asked. Kai looked at the water. "Only if we remember." They held hands, 2 souls from different worlds, bound by courage, sacrifice, and a love that crossed all distance. This land had changed, not through blood, but through hope.